Good evening, everyone. Firstly, can I just say how impressed I am that it is a Sunday evening, it's like 5:30, and you're still all here. There is no US or UK journalism conference. We'd be down the pub. I can't believe you're not drinking cocktails. So, I'm very grateful that you're here, and like Angie, I'm very sorry that I can't speak Portuguese, but British people are terrible at other languages, and it's my personal embarrassment. So, why can't we use the term F*** news? I'm going to talk a little bit about that concept and some of the work that we've done and how I think it relates to your election next year. So firstly, So I lead First Draft. Yes, I lead First Draft, and a couple of months ago we actually moved to Harvard University. So as somebody said, I've gone to non-profit heaven, which is true. And what we do is build resources for journalists, but what we mostly do is these projects in the field. So lots of research is done, experimental research in laboratories with American undergraduate students. And we make these big claims about a whole host of big, important matters. We believe that we need to do projects in the field. We then research those projects, and then we use that to build resources for journalists around best practice. So the site is firstdraftnews.org. We are experts in verification. So Angie talked about fact-checking. Fact-checking is the authentication of official sources. You fact-check politicians' claims. Verification, which is what we do, is the authentication of unofficial sources. So how do you verify a YouTube video from Syria posted by an activist? How do you authenticate a Twitter account? Is it a bot or is it a real account? So that's the kind of work that we do. So this is from Google Trends and shows people's searches for the term F*** news. What do we think is that peak there, where more people searched? Probably something to do with Trump. It was this day here, it was the 11th of January, which was the first time Donald Trump called out CNN and described them as F*** news. So there are two reasons we can't use this phrase. The first one is because authoritarian politicians, not just Trump, politicians around the world now use it to describe information that they do not like. They are using it as an excuse to clamp down on free speech and to clamp down on the Fourth Estate. So as journalists, we cannot use the phrase. It's being used as a weapon against us, number one. Number two, it's just a useless term. It doesn't actually describe what we're talking about. We're talking about a complex ecosystem of polluted information. Different types, different scales, different severity. So back in February, I created this typology because I was so frustrated by this term. And I'm going to talk you through the 7 different types of mis- and disinformation. So the first one is satire or parody. This is actually a satirical site from Pakistan. You might not know this site. If this appears in your Facebook feed, you probably don't know that it's satire. So while satire is a form of art, in a social networked world, it can end up becoming polluted information. I also talk about clickbait. Actually, when journalists write headlines that send the audience to an article that doesn't do what it promised, that is a form of information pollution. We should think about our own headline writing when we think about what we are adding to this polluted ecosystem. Thirdly, misleading content. Journalists have often used statistics in misleading ways. We often use images in misleading ways. We will crop them. And visualizations can often be a problem. This was from the UK election. The graph did not use the same systematic use of metrics. It was a misleading graphic. You might not be able to see this, but I talk about false context. Lots of times we reshare old information. It's not fake information, it's genuine information. We just reshare. So this image was tweeted and said it was from the Nepal earthquake from a couple of years ago. And the original photographer had to tweet and say, no, I took this image in 2007. We often reshare information without checking, and that's misinformation and is part of the problem. Then we have imposter content, when people take logos from news organizations and actually use that as a way of sharing false content. So here's an example where somebody took the BBC News logo and shared it on WhatsApp in Kenya during the Kenyan elections, and BBC Africa had to tweet out saying, do not fall for this video, it's not our video, it's not BBC Africa. And then I talk about manipulated content. So you might not be able to see this image, but it was shared very widely in the lead up to the US presidential election. And it shows an immigration arrest at a polling station. Both those images are true images. The people standing in line, it was taken in March 2016. The arrest, you can find if you search arrest immigration on Google. Somebody put those two things together and it's shared very widely. Now, if you're being clever and you looked for 2 seconds, you would think, why is nobody turning around to look at the arrest? Why is everybody on their phone? But actually, in a visual, we are much less likely to be critical. They speed past us on our phones and we're much less likely to be critical. And finally, we all focus on the news website that said the Pope endorsed Trump. This was more concerning, these type of visuals that were targeted at African American voters to say you can stay at home and vote via SMS. Not true. This is what we need to be much more concerned about, not fabricated news websites, it's visuals that are most concerning. So, I talk a lot in America. Americans are obsessed with America. So I constantly have to tell them this is a global problem. And the biggest concern are closed messaging apps. You know who loves closed messaging apps? Brazil. Your WhatsApp usage is very, very high. And so when I look towards your election next year, I'm very worried about the impact of closed messaging apps. I'm also very worried about bots. There's a lot of talk right now about Russian bots. There have been bots in Latin America for a long time. Because of your economy, people are prepared to act like bots, which makes them cyborgs. You have automated bots, you have humans that act like bots, they're called cyborgs. And actually, if we look around the world, we see real challenges in Myanmar, in India, in the Philippines, in Kenya, in South Africa, in Nigeria, where this type of disinformation is causing people to lose their lives. It's leading to protests, it's leading to very deep divisions around religion, ethnic causes, racial divisions. And so when we focus on this issue in the American context, we're missing the whole global context. Ooh. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was the power of visuals. Can we press play, my friends? Hello. Oh, it's a great video. Okay, that's all right. I'll recreate it. So if you haven't listened to this episode, it was on This American Life, and they went to one of the balls the night that Trump got elected and spoke to some of the young men who believed that they helped elect Donald Trump. And they basically said, we memed him into power. A meme being a visual with text. We memed him into power. We shit-posted our way into the future. We directed the culture. That was the clip I was going to play. They used visuals to change what they perceived the election. And this was during the French election when US teenagers who couldn't speak French created Dropbox folders of memes. They called them meme shells, like little bombs that they would drop into Twitter. And they would do Twitter raids at 6 p.m. in the evening when they would all use the same hashtag in France, even though they were based in the US. And if you saw the Russian ads that were displayed during the hearings 2 weeks ago, this is why we need to be nervous of visuals. People are a lot less critical of visuals, and whilst these do not look sophisticated, they are incredibly powerful. So, the last problem is media manipulation. If you are a journalist in this room, be aware that forces of disinformation are targeting you because they see you at the end of the chain of disinformation. They post things in 4chan and Reddit, it ends up on Twitter, it ends up in a newspaper. So here's an example of how Nazis in the US will post one poster on a college campus. The local newspaper will cover that one poster and say, can you believe it? We're having a Nazi rally on the campus. There's never going to be a rally. What they're looking for is coverage by the newspapers. So understanding how these forces are using the media is really important. And what we see now is all of the major US newsrooms, it's been shown, ran stories from Russian bots that were not true. So in terms of when I think about your election next year, you should be worried, and you should make sure that your newsrooms are aware of how to monitor for this stuff, how to debunk this stuff, and how to effectively and responsibly talk to your audiences about it. Thank you.